I'm Jade Hernandez. Welcome to GatherVerse News Unscripted, your home for humanity-centered tech journalism. Immersive virtual reality refers to a news product that enables viewers to experience certain events and specific circumstances of news reports from a first-person perspective. So what does immersive virtual reality news mean to viewers? Better yet, what does it mean for storytellers? The answer to that question is still being written and debated. Now, there are news organizations which have begun to use this form of storytelling, opening up a whole new way for viewers to glean information. CBS News has always been at the forefront of solid reporting. Think 60 Minutes, CBS Sunday Morning, programs which have been informing for decades. This time around, CBS Bay Area here in San Francisco has tackled 360 storytelling and its television viewers and viewers in virtual reality. The journalist in this is a Bay Area, here in the Bay Area, is doing this. He is an Emmy Award-winning journalist, Itai Had. Itai, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Nice to see you.
Wonderful, Itai. Let's dig in. I want you to tell viewers how long you've been telling stories in 360.
So we started telling our first story. We started shooting our stories late last year, so around probably December of last year, and we've been telling these stories for the last few months since.
Now,
pretty nice.
I want to show a little video of what you've been doing. So let's listen and let's watch. I think viewers are going to be pretty amazed.
Is here. Experience it in 360.
Oh my goodness.
You can literally look in any direction.
It's virtual reality that puts you in the heart of the story. Feel the thrill of flying a fighter jet.
Absolutely amazing.
Shred the slopes in Tahoe and roam the coastal redwoods. Scan the QR code to watch Bay Area news in 360. Our stories define us. VR stories define us. On KPIX and CBS News Bay Area.
Itai, now these stories, as we just saw, are best accessed with a VR headset if you have one. But we're also seeing on CBS Bay Area how you're allowing television viewers to get a chance to actually see these stories that you're doing. How are you doing this?
Yeah, so that was a really big question, right? Because you shoot it in 360 and 3D, but people at home either may not have those goggles or the technology to watch it. But also, how do you present it to them? Because you can't really show it to them while they're watching it on TV. So what we would do is, at first we started shooting simultaneously a 3D version plus a 2D version. And that turned out to be a lot of work. And so what we realized later on that it was much simpler to take that 3D version. It goes through some processing and the editing. It's very simple. And you essentially flatten it to show it in 2D. So what we ended up doing in our station is we had the headsets on set. We gave them to the anchor. They were simulcasting directly into a big monitor on set. And so the viewer at home was able to at least get a sense of what it is that the anchor was watching. And I was there to introduce the story and sort of walk people through the process of what it's like to experience a story in 3D. So people may not know. If you look up, you'll see the stars in the sky. If you look down, you'll see, the water. If you're doing a story about, a lake or whatever it is, showing people the idea of not just watching something that's been edited for you to follow, right? Because when we show a story in 2D, we tell you where to look, right? We do a close-up of the hands. We do a close-up of the person's face. If it's an emotional reaction, we tell you where the action is. Here, you're the editor because you can look in any direction at any given point, and every time you watch it, it's a different experience.
It's a different experience. And I know that this experience and what you're doing was taken to the Expo. That's the Augmented World Expo in Santa Clara just a few weeks back. We're going to let viewers see this aspect while we discuss how this has actually changed the way you tell stories. And I think, this must have been a daunting task at hand to be told, okay, you're not just going to be telling stories in one form. You're going to learn a whole new way to tell stories, and you still need to bring the viewers in and tell a good story, right?
Yeah, I mean, and there are sort of philosophical questions about how to tell a story like this. How do you focus a story like this? How do you frame it? But also some of the more sort of technical issues, like when you ask a question as a reporter, you're usually standing behind the camera. You have the person looking into the camera or looking at the reporter, however you like. And that's how an interview has always been done for generations. Here, you can't do that because it's 360. So we would have to do things like, for example, one of the stories that we did was about a guy who lived in a forest. And so we would ask the question, then run behind a tree and have him answer it because we didn't want to be caught in that 360 view.
Well, that's right. That 360 view, I have actually put on the headset and seen what you're talking about, in that while someone's talking to me, while they're answering basically your question, I'm you, and I can turn around all the way and see what I want to see. And
Correct.
that is such a different perspective. What was the most difficult part for you as a journalist?
I think just wrapping my mind around telling a story without the ability of editing, right? So usually we can fix things with our edits, right? If someone goes too long, you can cut their answer and sort of splice it together and then cover it. Or if you, you want to show people something very specific, you get a nice close up of something and then kind of show people where to look and where the center of the story is, where the heart of the story is. Here, you really can't do that. Also, because of the headsets, if you start cutting too many places, if there's too many shots, it can make a person a little dizzy. So literally you have to learn how to tell the story in fewer edits and longer shots and still maintain that intimacy, because what you get with the editing is you are able to get close to the subject. Here, the camera isn't really moving. You put the camera in the middle, it shoots in all directions. And so you have to figure out how to keep that heart of the story, the intimacy of the story, still tell a really, really good tale, but doing it sometimes from very much from afar. And so it was literally starting to understand it as almost like a different language of storytelling. We're still telling a story, but we're using different technology, which forces us to use different tools when telling that story.
Itai, I'm hoping that we can show that video from the expo, because I know that there were a bunch of your stories, they put them all together. And we're talking, as a journalists go out every day, in a plane or, all different things. But you've told some really incredible stories. What's the most memorable so far? I know the one that I'm thinking of, but I want to see if it matches up with what you might have thought.
Yeah, so all of them it turned out to be really cool. One of them was in a magical forest about a guy who lost his home in a fire and how it forced him to create a new relationship with Mother Nature, right? Not knowing what's going to happen. He didn't want to rebuild his home, and he found a different way of occupying his little slice of heaven. Then we did a story about adaptive skiing, which is skiing for people with disabilities, how it's evolved over the years from catering to people with physical disabilities to now really broadening that spectrum of disabilities and helping people with cognitive disabilities. So we followed a kid who had severe autism and could barely speak and do everyday tasks. But when you put him on a pair of skis, he just sort of something clicks and he is just amazing on those slopes. So we got
we got to see part of that video of the slopes, and you could actually see, the camera going down. It's incredible how much it puts you in the driver's seat.
And that's really the point of these stories. So we looked for stories that weren't just a really good story, but that there was a reason why we're telling you this in 3D. So when we did a story, for example, on the driverless cars, we took a ride on one of the Waymo cars all around San Francisco, showing people what it's like to really sit in a car that has no driver. And a lot of people are skittish about getting into these cars for good reason. We don't like the idea of a car maneuvering itself in the middle of the streets of San Francisco. So here we thought, what a better way to show you how this works than putting you in the middle of that car with no one else, so you get a real feel of what it's like to sit in it. And then the last story, which I think is my favorite, is we took a really close look at this little unknown profession here in San Francisco, the unsung heroes, if you will, of the supply chain. They are the human link in the supply chain, if you will, and they are these master mariners, these pilots of these ships the size of skyscrapers. And what they do is every ship that comes into the bay, they are required by law to take over the ship and take it in and out of the bay, not just to protect the ship and the cargo, but specifically to protect the environment and the bay itself. Because these channels that were built, over 2 centuries ago, they weren't built for these huge ships. And so now we have these ships the size of 2 football fields trying to maneuver these channels. And unless you know it like the back of your hand, they're called bar pilots because there's sandbars on each side of these channels. And they really have to sort of thread that needle, if you will, and find a way through those channels. So we followed them as they board these ships, sometimes in the middle of the ocean with 25 feet waves. And we did that all in 360. And we gave you that feeling of, we put a 360 camera on the back of one of those pilots as he was climbing one of these ships. And you really get a sense like you're almost piggybacking on him.
Yeah. You got a chance to do that too. I remember seeing you climb, and there's a gap in between. And if you were to look down, you see water.
Correct, because they have to jump from these ships they get picked up by these little boats. So the boat has to sort of almost find its way next to the ship. And if they're moving, there's waves and it's up and down, and they have to jump from the ship to the boat or from the boat to the ship. And so we gave you a real feeling of what it's like to be there. And more so than just watching it in 2D, you're looking down, you're looking up, you're looking to the sides. You really get a sense of what it's like to be in the story rather than, say, watching it from the sidelines.
What's the reaction been?
It's been amazing, I have to tell you. First of all, you can see it when you bring a story like this to the newsroom, because, us reporters, we're all pretty jaded. We've seen it all. The anchors, the people, the technical people behind the scenes, everyone who was there thought this was just incredible. They'd never seen anything like it. And we were showing everything on that big monitor, as you see right there on the screen. So you really can't help but to be impressed by this technology. And I think everyone that I posted some of these things on social media, and I have a lot of friends who are journalists, so I can tell when something gets a lot of sort of buzz. The reaction's been pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive. And I know that, I don't know if other journalists have reached out to you, because what CBS Bay Area is doing with their stories in 360 is not something done on a local level. You've seen it in the documentary realm. I mean, this has been going on for 10 years, but the access, there hasn't been a lot of access to these types of stories. So do you think that this is something that you see that other stations, because I know that it can be pricey.
Yes, so that's really, you hit the nail on the head. So right now, I haven't seen a lot of especially local stations doing this. It's extremely expensive still, but it's getting to the point where I think we're just at that tipping point, right? Where the technology is becoming a little cheaper. You can buy one of those small 360 cameras. It's not 3D, it's 360, but it gives you almost that same effect. You can buy those cameras today for $500, $550. The editing is becoming a little more user friendly. So it's at that point right now where it's still pretty expensive if you have to do it, especially if you have to hire people who know how to edit this. Because part of the challenge with 360, the way it works is you have a ball, right? And it has 8 cameras that are shooting in every which way. And then you need to take all that information and almost stitch it together with and special editing. It
It's
takes a
time-consuming.
while. It's time consuming. It's very it's data heavy, so you need some good equipment to handle that kind of data. Uh, and so I think that's one of those things where it's going to get there. It's just not there yet because it's going to take a little while longer before it becomes a little bit more accessible to smaller stations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, in your opinion, do you see this as the future of journalism?
Yeah, isn't that the $64,000 question, right? I personally think that if it isn't the future, it's definitely going to be a huge part of it. So right now, these goggles are still pretty expensive. If you saw the new Apple pricing on it, I think it was somewhere around $3,500. That's still a lot of money, but you can buy these goggles now, especially if you're not buying the latest model. So maybe like one generation or two generations that are older, you can get it now for 200, sometimes even less. So my thinking is, just like iPhones and other technology has become so ubiquitous that everyone has it, I think in the same realm that we have a TV set at home, most families at some point are going to have this. There's just no escaping it. The potential to make money off virtual reality and the metaverse, right, is just ginormous. So, you know, I've spoken to real estate. I tried to do a story about a real estate broker who is now using virtual reality in the metaverse to sell houses. And one of the things that she told me was people are now buying not just the house, but they're buying the house in the virtual meta world as well. And
The connection, the two, like the same plot of land. I think I've heard that.
land. And what she said was, and I asked, and I said, how much would a house like that cost? She said $100,000 if it's in Beverly Hills, right? So the prices are already reaching sort of points that we can't even wrap our minds around. And one of the things that she said is people are realizing that there's a lot of potential to make money. So for example, if you're a gallery, you can literally hang the same virtual pictures in the wall of some of these houses, and anyone who takes a tour can see the painting and maybe buy the real painting in a gallery. Or, you know, maybe you're going to create a store there, because if you're creating a universe where people are going to spend time in that universe, then that's eyeballs. And if you have eyeballs, that's money. And so I think it's going to be very hard for news organizations and other organizations and businesses to not have a presence in this world if it's going to go in the direction that it seems to be going, right? Metaverse has had some issues. So of other places, there's still kind of like a fight between all these big tech companies on who is going to control or who's going to have that one universe that everyone's going to be at. We don't know that yet. Only time can tell. But it looks like it's going in a direction that if you're a storyteller, you definitely want to be part of that story.
Absolutely. And everybody, as you mentioned, is going to try to stake their claim.
Yes. And I think that's part of the reason why CBS wanted to do this, despite the fact that, listen, it took a while to shoot. It took a while to edit. It took a while to figure it out. In terms of return on investment, probably not so much at this point. But the reason I think CBS wanted to do this is because you have to, like you said, stake your claim and make sure that you're there at the ground level, because whoever is going to be there at the ground level is going to probably reap the most benefits, is going to really see that return on their investment.
And everybody's going to be looking for stories. There will be stories in real life and in the virtual reality world as well. And there will be journalists like you, Itai Had, making waves and engaging all of the viewers, whether in the virtual world or here in real life. Thank you so much, Itai, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. Well, what's up next? On Wednesday, our very own Lisa Bernard will have a pioneer profile. This is where we bring you an in-depth look at someone who's a leader in Web3 and who is also considering the impact emerging tech has on humans in society. Tomorrow, we introduce you to Sherry Byrne-Haber. Sherry's an expert in creating systems and programs to ensure disability inclusion and accessibility in Web3 businesses and experiences. Join Lisa for that interview right here tomorrow at noon Pacific time on GatherVerse News Unscripted. That's all from the GatherVerse News today. I'm Jade Hernandez. Have a great day. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.